Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's David Palmer, the Leo King, here at highvibe.tv for After Dark, the awesome show where we talk about everything spiritual. It is the Spiritual Talk Show. And in order to keep this show free and on YouTube, we ask you to check out highvibe.tv. We got awesome programming on there. You can buy videos individually, or for the best price, of course, you could just subscribe. And we have apps. We have it on iOS. We have it on Android. We have it on Apple TV, and Roku is just about to get approved in the next week. And we just are finishing Amazon Fire. So go to highvibe.tv. You can make a free account too and watch all the free content on the apps or the website as well. This is a lunar eclipse, and we've got an awesome lineup tonight. We got Sarah Paasch in the house, and we've got the Spirit Advisor, and we've got co-founder of highvibe.tv in the house, Abby Moneyhun. What's going on, everybody?
What's going on?
No idea.
We've had our otter pops.
Yes. I brought otter pops.
I just realized it was otter pops. Like, I just put that together because otter is the medicine of joy.
Oh. It's very Cancerian to show up with otter pops.
Yeah, it was dope.
Especially when there's so much Capricornian energy around. That would be like a cornucopia that you would show up with.
Sure.
No, you know what it is? Is like what I think the difference is like people are willing to have like an otter pop, but like when you show up with like a big like kind of Capricornian food, it's like really pretty. You almost don't want to touch it. You know, like it'll mess the whole thing up.
It's like an ice sculpture.
Yeah, you know, like a cornucopia. You know how they like show up with like all the in the fall, like, you know.
I don't know. I feel like as a Capricorn, I would be like, I brought this. It needs to be put to use. Like, I would be like, I don't want this to go to waste. So I feel like I would just plan on bringing something that I'm going to know people are going to want to, and they'll have just enough. But yeah, I'm going to think it out.
Think that one out. I think that you would want that, but as the people, they would be like, I don't want to mess this thing up. It's like perfectly set up. Am I the one that messes it up when I take this piece out of it? Like, But with like otter pops, it's like, here, let me get that one.
Yeah. Maybe it's like my Sag. That's kind of like, I'll take the first piece and make everyone feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You can mess it up.
Well, how are you all feeling about just like after this eclipse cycle the last couple weeks?
Whew. Wow, it's really hard to even like kind of place it yet, because I feel like we're still so in it, and it's so deep, and I think it goes, it's deep, but it's also so expansive in the sense that we're clearing so much on a collective level about how we deal with some of our core dilemmas in terms of belief, in terms of self-concept, in terms of inner truth, in terms of being able to speak power to our personal inner truth, and also navigating really high frequency events that can create a lot of disruption in the normal functioning of our mind even, and how we feel and how we go about our day-to-day, earthly life. So as of right now, I'm still feeling very, very high vibe, but in a sense, almost like ungrounded by it all.
Ungrounded in Capricorn. Isn't that an interesting one?
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's because Pluto's there, right? Which is kind of like this, like, I don't want to call it a hole, but it reminds me of like a drill. And so like there is this like deeper, intense, like, energy, or it's like cultivating the soil, right? So it's like you're stepping on it, but woo, it's a fixed planet, Scorpio. So it's like you'd think it'd kind of be more stiff, but there is maybe this south node. Maybe it's the south node of Saturn, which kind of creates that too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in a very personal level, it's felt like a pressure cooker in this, like, the plutonic drilling, it's not over till it's over, and it's not through until it's through. And it's like, it's not the gripping or the struggle, the emotional intensity is there because we're being just like, at least for me personally, like pushed to the edge of crossing what feels like emergence of every timeline of this lifetime and maybe other lifetimes. But I know every like evolution, personal evolution I've had, it's almost like all of those timelines have come together at once. And it's like, will you like repeat any of these? And giving me like all these options to repeat them. And the intensity of the emotions is just this beautiful window into like the clarity of what is not serving authentically anymore. And it's forced, like you were talking about in deep astrology, it's forced the truth to come out. Like for us to be honest with ourselves, for us to be honest with each other, for us to just like put everything on the table. And today, actually, I feel lighter. Like today I feel good because I've done so much of that in the last week, especially over the weekend. And yesterday it was a lot of that kind of like purging and then having to like really take action and show up for it. And then, now it's like, all right, I feel like that grieving process is complete for now.
What? Yeah.
What's happening?
What's up, Abby? It's good to have you here.
Hi. It's good to be here. I was kind of wavering on whether to come out this week because plans kind of fell through. But it's like I wanted to be here, like in the high vibe house for the eclipse and for the full moon. And I was over in Riverton, Wyoming with my parents for all last week. And it was so incredible for me. The realizations that I've had, I cannot believe the things that it triggers, like from when I was a little girl. And here I am in my 50s, but I have felt like the same fears that I felt when I was just like a little girl at my parents' house, which is really strange for me because that's, it's been really far removed. But what I see too is a lot going on in my physical body. Like I've gotten a lot of edema. I've never had like water retention or swelling or things like that. And then I watched Tim's weekly report for health, and he said that's what Tauruses would be going through. So I was kind of glad to know that was a normal symptom.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Tim's really good.
Tim is really, really dead on. And I was so glad I remembered just to watch that and I think everybody should do that for their sign if they are experiencing health stuff, because I know a lot of people are feeling it in their lungs. It's hard to catch we feel like we're not breathing real deep. We're feeling like a lot of pressure. So much nauseousness. Like I know so many people that just feel like they're sick, but they're really not sick. It's like, I almost think that those flu symptoms are ascension symptoms. And I think that's important for people to remember. Like we're really not going crazy. We're really not dying. We really are just having pieces of our own body die off and release. That's not, it's not necessary to have there anymore.
Yeah, and it's very, especially because the lunar eclipse was on Pluto, like you're going to feel what Pluto feels like, which is that death, that rebirth, that release, that purge, that really kind of, it plays out for people in so many different ways,
Yeah.
But it's like there's something about that Plutonian vibe. For a long time, I used to I was born with a very intense aspect to it. So I kind of got used to it after a while. So for me, I feel like if I'm not seeing some sort of change, I'll feel it more. But if I'm in the middle of the change, I don't feel it. I'm like, yeah, it's happening. Okay. But if I'm restricting myself from it, that's when I'm like, oh God. But that's me because I have it in square. So for others, this time might just be well, what is it bringing up? And then astrology can help you with your body parts and knowing what body parts like are being affected, or like Dylan with human design, like he goes deep into different aspects of your whole body and what areas are maybe being blocked or activated or shut down or wide open. That's what's really cool about human design.
That's something else we were talking about earlier, because I don't know how many people out there have been feeling this. We've all been experiencing like twitching. Like, I don't know if you've noticed like certain parts of your body, like it'll just all of a sudden start twitching, you know, like around your knee or maybe in your shoulder or maybe in your back. And I really believe that those codons are just connecting and rewiring. And so that's something we were going to look at with the human design map and see if like the spots that are twitching on my physical body align with something in there.
Ooh.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been just having the like I'll be falling asleep and then out of nowhere just like oh my gosh, like wait, am I dream? No, wait, and then going back, you know. There's been a lot of that. Sorry, my alarm's going off. You probably want to turn it on, off, or stop. I'll call you. We're good. It's like there's so much for me of like I'm twitching going into the dream world. Like I'm like doing the wait, and then I'm like, okay, let me go back to sleep. Okay, that's where mine's happening. Like I'm kind of like, yes, I'm going in there, and then there's something like this reality is like trying to pull me back in. I'm like, wait, no. Okay, go back.
Well, this is definitely a pineal gland activating moon.
Ooh.
This Pluto and this moon are both in Gate 61 in human design, which is all about the pineal gland, and it's all about the pressure of why. You know, why are we here? Who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? All these questions about life stem from the mental pressure of the pineal gland as it exerts itself on the gray matter of our brain, forcing it to just rattle through all the abstract neurons deep in our cortex, or the different centers of our brain, and to try and pull out some kind of reasoning, some kind of understanding, some kind of truth that we can then communicate and share and find, you know, communion over a certain idea with. But I think because it's Pluto and it's an eclipse, we're really kind of seeing that there is no true answer to these questions. You know, these are questions that just create more questions, and that the true answer lies in not trying to like manically or in desperation find an answer or find a belief system or find a definite direction, but to rather surrender to that pressure and allow it to penetrate deeper into our form, to then allow that kind of alchemization that the pineal gland can create. And I think that also it kind of marks this time when the astrology is becoming more physical as we are moving into higher vibrations, and we really are like within one lifetime evolving through many different energy systems within one body. It's like evolution is using us to push itself as far as it possibly can. And that means that old DNA, old codons, you know, old brain system patterns are all going to be wiped. And I feel like that was a big symptom of this moon and why it's kind of still integrating, because like you were saying, it's like things were really brought together and only like the strongest energy is going to move forward, whatever that is. Whether that's true or not, whether that's your truth or not, is another matter.
I love that you bring up this pineal gland, because I saw a video on YouTube from this guy, like, I think it was this weekend. It just randomly, somebody had sent it to me. And the way that it looks in the brain, like basically he was connecting it with the Sphinx in Egypt to like all these ancient aspects, like that actually everything is pointing to the pineal gland, and that in that position of where we're at, that the illusion of the reality and all that stuff can be taken hostage in a negative way through that position, right? Mm-hmm. And that the programming that's been going on for so long is there, and that instead of it being this outer world that like people are trying to like see, or is aliens going to give me the answer or anything, it's like more of like, no, you need to go into that, you need to go behind your own. That's what's weird, is you have to go behind your own false illusional self,
Right.
and go deep into that gland and like see the truth, like, and break through that.
Exactly.
It's behind you. That's the funny thing.
Yeah, it's like when we take this mental pressure to figure out life and we let it filter through our brain systems, it fries us, it frazzles us, it puts us in a psychosis because our brain simply can't handle that high frequency. But if we take that same high frequency and, like I was saying, let it penetrate deeper, let it go through our solar plexus system, there's so much more capacity to expand our awareness with this energy, rather than lead us to asking all these questions and kind of be kind of in this state of anxiety of not knowing why or what or how. And this gate 61 is so pivotal. Like, it's so important to how we've developed as a species, especially in the civilized, the more recent civilized era, because that pressure to ask why has given rise to the left brain approach of science. Okay, let's try and figure it out ourselves every way possible. Let's experiment with our logic and our reasoning to try and make sense of this all. Or from the right brain, let's just chalk it all up to God and religion and just hand over our whole reasoning to, a higher power or a religious institution. So it's like these major societal institutions, infrastructures are being targeted, and with Pluto in the mix, whatever is not in integrity for evolution's sake is gonna be exposed and purged, basically.
And 61, I mean, I'm going to kind of add them in as 7, and it is a spiritual number, and it is a release number. So I think it is interesting about releasing, but actually releasing is confronting the ending of so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird.
Going
Surrender
in and that whole idea of apocalypse, and that the true definition of apocalypse is just unveiling.
Yeah.
It's just the revelation of the truth, and that's something that you can't have all at once, or the truth can hurt. That energy can like fry you in a sense. So that unveiling has to be a gentle and gradual process.
So, Sarah, you're a Capricorn. It doesn't feel apocalyptic with Pluto, Saturn, South Node, and a lunar eclipse in your sign? What does it feel like from a Capricorn's view?
Yeah, great question. I feel like I felt everything under the surface. Like no hiding. Like no hiding from myself. No hiding from my true feeling. No hiding from what is in alignment and what's not. Every way I was potentially trying to block myself from listening to myself, from going inward. I was looking up our notes from our conversation last week when we talked about figuring it all out. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to like get rid of that noise in my head, but then it was like, anyways. So the whole thing is like actually listening to yourself and letting go of what that means, like what change it's going to have, there's going to be a consequence no matter what. And there's just been a lot of facing consequences and choosing and getting like really purging and doing the healing around any kind of victim mentality. So feeling like there's a victimization to only have one choice, like, or that, it's not black or white. And so there's been like these multi-layered healings, like one situation that I think is triggering this pattern that I'm working out. When I actually go into it and I start working with it, it's like, oh, wait, actually, and like all these other things reveal themselves. And so like getting to like these root systems of really old, like perception filters that are painful or whatever. And it's been apocalyptic, but it's been internally. It's felt like that for me anyways, until I like just had the courage to, like I said, put it all on the table and like communicate from the heart and kind of expose myself first to myself and then to like anybody that maybe I was afraid. If I was afraid of change, if there was somewhere I was like afraid of change, and so therefore I was afraid to communicate like what I was actually feeling, like that just like wasn't landing or working, and that was causing like combustion or implosion. I don't know the right word. But actually what I found is that when I did communicate, like when I took that like risk, it was received so well. Like, and that's like the mirror that's coming up for me right now is like, if we think we're sidestepping something that's like not working out for us because we're trying to like save somebody else from feeling a certain way, or we're self-sacrificing to make something work that we're not really happy or fulfilled in, but we're like, we don't want to hurt somebody else. It's never true. Like if it's not authentic for us, and if it's not truly genuine, or if it doesn't feel real, like that's never actually like received in that way. It can't be. And so sure, there might be some pain to process any kind of ending or change or whatever it is when we're actually honest. But in the end, we're freeing both parties. We're freeing everything involved. And I think that's really proven itself to me in these past few days, especially, is just like, just be authentic, just be true, and like surrender and trust, you know? Yeah.
But what about the Tauruses with Uranus there? I feel like Tauruses kind of get a little hall pass.
A hall pass?
Yeah.
Really?
Because really Uranus is direct. It's like this is Capricorn, Cancer stuff. It's all making positive aspects to Taurus. Like really, Taurus is kind of in a, I mean, you guys got Mars squaring it, but that's in Mercury retrograde, but that's like not really that powerful compared to what's going on everywhere else. So there is a hall pass for Tauruses right now.
Well, that's kind of nice. I'm Cap rising, so I don't know how that affects.
Well, that's a big one.
I know it has affected things. I want to speak to what Dylan was saying too about the pineal gland and the realization that I've had just over this last, like few months of looking at apocalyptic things. Every single thing that we look at, and Sadhguru is like a perfect teacher of this, but every single thing that we see where it's really beheld is right here behind our eyes. And the problem is that we get so consumed by everything that we see out here that we forget that we can just zone right back in to where everything is residing and be more choosy about what we're allowing to float around in there. And I think that can remove some of the apocalyptic thoughts, because I know for myself, there was a period of time, I think it was probably about 2 years ago, and it seemed like I was seeing about 2 years into the future, so what it had felt like, which would be right now. And it was just like there was a choice that was being made. And every single person, like when we were even, like looking through Facebook and getting irritated with what we saw, it's like we were all casting votes about what we thought was supposed to be happening in the future. Like a collective consciousness that was creating this giant picture simply by the thoughts that we were having. Like maybe we were really super frustrated with things at work, and so we're just shooting out hate and harm everywhere we go. We're casting votes. And I feel like the period of time that we're in right now, it's like all the votes have been cast. And it feels like we're just in this void space waiting to see what's going to happen now with all of it.
A hanging Chad moment.
That's what it feels like. So it feels to me like there's not even a lot of room to even be manifesting anything right now, because it's like, it feels like in a couple of weeks or so, maybe we'll know what we're actually dealing with.
100%.
I know for me, myself right now, it's like, okay, then what I'm going to focus on is what can I do that's, joyful, like right now in this moment. And that's all that matters. And the truth of it is, that's all that mattered all along. You know, like even, I mean, go back even in the 1800s, that's all that mattered all along.
It's true. It's kind of weird, though, because if you look at the hanging Chad moment of 2000 for the election for Bush and Gore, the way that it went was Roger Stone, was behind Reagan and a bunch of people, had everybody storm the vote, the counting, you know, where they were counting the ballots with Republican people, like demanding, like, what are you talking about, right? And by doing that storm, basically they kind of couldn't handle the pressure, and then it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court judges were more conservative, so the Supreme Court elected Bush, right? And there's something about this Pluto-Saturn thing with South Node there, and I hate to get political because it is kind of an interesting thing of like, we might have casted all these votes, but there are these higher powers that kind of, I think, helped those votes be projected a certain way through the imagery, the media, the way that we were being sent things about social media, the way that we were seeing things on the news, the stories they were choosing. I don't know why my guides are wanting to bring up the Vegas shooting. And what happened to that, right? Like, what if there's an answer? What happened? Like, there's obviously a lot of questions about that thing, but they just pushed that one under the rug. Really, really good. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying, like, they did a good job of like, oh yeah, and that thing has a lot of questions unanswered. But there's something about this Pluto, Saturn, and South Node and Capricorn, and the moon occulting it in a lunar eclipse, that there is a hidden agenda going on. So the votes, I agree, have been cast, but it was like, part of it was like there was some forces kind of helping project the votes that way, to help those votes go that way. And I think that this is a moment for people to kind of go, even if they do get cast, doesn't mean that you have to break any laws or break any rules or how they end up, but choose to align maybe in a different vibration or whatever shows up here, and kind of sidestep it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's hilarious when people don't like presidents, because it's like every president, there's somebody that doesn't like it, right? So it's like, do you really have to live by that the whole time? Like, you can always sidestep the whole, like, I don't like this president thing, and move on with your life and not even pay attention to it or what's really going on. Because every president has something that affects what we think to be our lives so intensely, and then really it kind of, you go, well, wait, that last president did that, and then wait, that last president. So it's like a funnel of the same energy, and then we blame the person in front, or we blame this, or I think we have to get rid of the blame game a lot with this. Maybe that's the positive side of this Capricorn thing, is Capricorn doesn't want to put blame on things. You know, it's like kind of like, this is what it is. This is what you deal with it, and figure out a great solution to make the best of it. You know, like, it's not that it's harsh. It's like, it's harsh if you don't want to show up and create your own, you know, way, or create your own positive integrity with it, and sidestep it. The goats have to always sidestep, you know.
I don't know if this is part of that Capricorn energy, but I remember there was a period of time, it must have been around 2015, so I don't know what I would have been going through astrologically then, but I felt like I was crying myself to sleep every single night. You know, like, just on the bathroom floor crying my eyes out, in the shower crying my eyes out, in the, you know, laying down in bed crying my eyes out, because relationship, work, everything was just, felt like a wreck. And the interesting thing about right now is, like, I will go to cry, and then it's almost like it gets funny, because it's like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, get up. Like, you're sitting there being like this little tiny baby about what? I mean, and that's not a very kind voice. And you typically, you know me, like, usually I would be like all soft and cuddly, and it's now there's no tolerance for it. It's just like, sit up. Like, what is really that bad? Is it really that bad? And I know that there are people I saw people tonight in the chat that have lost their children in death. And I know that is something that is something to really be sad about. But you look at the typical things that we get upset about. How many of us are making these things into really huge deals and making ourselves exist in this state of suffering, where really all we could do is change our mindset and look at it from a different perspective and realize it's not as bad or as big of a deal as we've made it. And we're going to get up and move on.
I think Mercury retrograde in Leo adds to the drama of small things. Like, like the floor did not get vacuumed in that corner of the carpet. Like, and it's just like, wait a second. You got to you're right. You have to kind of catch yourself. But then there's that other aspect where there are valid things to be emotional of. And maybe it's like learning to discern through Uranus and Taurus the value of what's important to be emotional about and what's not. Like there is kind of like a compass here that's trying to direct you in the right emotional position and pull you away from, what are you doing? Okay, move in this direction. Because that's a great valid point that you have, that it's these very tiny, very small, and that's very, very, very Mercury retrograde anyway. Like it becomes like we see it fully more, and then we actually realize when we look back, we've been doing that for a while.
Yeah, I went back and read my journal, and it is the same stuff every single day that I was complaining about. And it was maybe a guy didn't like me, maybe, I didn't manifest the right amount of money. Maybe it was, my kids got in a fight. It's like, I look back and read it and it does feel kind of petty, but I think it's so important to observe it. And when emotion does come up, I'm not trying to be tough or say people are being babies. It's like, that's just what I'm feeling. I felt towards myself now after going through it and observing it from the other side. I think that's the biggest point, is that you don't get there unless you do observe it, but you have to take the time to observe it, and then you have to take the time to be like, who am I really as a person? Am I going to be that much of a weak person? Like, I remember asking somebody that a couple of weeks ago. I was like, are you really that fragile? Because if we as humanity are that fragile, we're screwed. And we're not that fragile. We've built this up in our mind that if we're going through a divorce, our lives end. Or if we're going through, and it feels tough at the time. It really does hurt when we're going through it. But if you can take a step back and just look at the real truth of it, like the knowing of it, we are not that fragile. Like, we came here encoded with this stuff. We know how to make it through this. And we just have to light our own flint and tinder within ourselves, our own fire, and allow ourselves to expand instead of holding ourselves down with these perceived weaknesses.
You just said the answer. Get on Tinder.
I've never done that.
I have something though for this. I was for like what you're not for Tinder. I'm not the expert there. No, but actually, because I have been, as a Capricorn, I'm not always comfortable expressing my emotions to myself, even, like, especially to somebody else. Dear God, don't know how much I feel. No, but I'm Sun in 4th house, so that's my journey, right? But this makes me think of an article I was reading about the North Node, South Node, Cancer, Capricorn, and about the souls that incarnate during the time of Capricorn South Node, and how that's kind of this mark of needing, when they come in with Capricorn South Node, they've come from suffering. They've come from lifetime after lifetime of hardship, of endurance, of just having to be tough. And they're here because they need nurturing, because they need that softness, because they need that tenderness. And I think what I've felt, like one of the many things that I've felt in the last week has been this understanding of it's not weak to feel, it's not weak to be sad. And I think that it's more so when we don't have an aversion to one end of an emotional spectrum and an attachment to the other. When I don't, high vibe doesn't need to be a state of joy, but actually what if high vibe is, again, just authenticity? And if I'm not afraid to there was something bothering me and I was like, come on, like, can we just let this go? Like, I love myself enough to think a better feeling thought. I love myself enough to put my attention on something else and to give myself that. And I was resisting and I was fighting myself and I was shaming myself on some level for feeling and for being weak. And so the medicine for me was to actually allow it, was just to acknowledge I feel this. And that actually lightened it like that. And that's always true, but I think when we're in emotion, we're trained and conditioned, and Capricorn South Node is like, get over it, endure. And I think right now, I don't know, I feel like maybe the medicine is a balance, a rebalancing of this, of not being so hypersensitive that we can't go anywhere or can't have somebody disagree with us without having a complete mental breakdown, or and we're not just don't feel that, get over it, move on. How do we learn how to properly process emotions?
It's about balance, because you can't just be a hard ass that is all stiff and constantly knock it off. You're not going to have any feeling. But I think that we're just at a dot in time where we're all learning how to stand up on our own 2 feet. For so long, I don't know about everybody else, I just know for myself, it's really easy to lean on other people, and depend on them for our nurturing, for our good mood, for our, our feelings of stability. And I feel like where we're at, especially with light workers is, and I think everybody's a light worker too, but I think that we're light workers, is that when we're actually able just to plant both of our feet on the ground and stand there with just feel the posturing of it, where you can actually just feel the stability of your own 2 feet, and where you can put your arms out at that point and grab hands with another, and we're all standing there, that solidly planted. That's true strength and power. And it doesn't mean that we can't have our weak moments. It just means that we're going to know that we are capable at any given time to plant our own 2 feet on the ground and stand up, even if it lasts for 5 seconds, and be like, I am okay. I'm honestly okay. And it's just like a baby that's learning how to walk. They take their first few steps, they do fall down, but they want to stand right back up and do it, themselves. And I feel like that's where, at least for me and the people that I've been talking to a lot, that's the point that we're at, where we are standing up. Literally, we're standing up and owning our power. And if we don't do that, we could choose to keep on going through it for several more years. It's our choice.
Or a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the judgment card in tarot. The angel with trumpet, and everybody's having to stand up out of their coffins, But I want to know from Dylan and human design, from the body. There's so many aspects in the body, from the crown to the sacral to the, there's with the spleen, but where's the grounding elements in human design to help people know how to ground when they're dealing with heavy emotional stuff? And where is also the emotional stuff lie really deep?
Right. So with looking at it through the body graph, we actually see that about 50% of humanity is emotionally defined, which is meaning that these are people that are carriers and generators of the emotional wave. And you don't have to be a generator to be one of these people. You can be an emotional manifester like Sarah, or an emotional projector, for example. And all these types refer to the different aura types that people have. But the thing to realize with emotion, kind of what you were touching on and what you're touching on, is that we have to be able to not see every spike and every lull as a recipe for action. Because the second that we take one of these high points or low points, which are only part of the bigger picture, as the whole picture or as the truth, that's the second that we become trapped in that subjective cycle of reaction and ultimately darkness and separation. The real way that we deal with emotion, especially as in how we look at it in human design, is that we let our wave take its course, and we just simply become experts and masters of recognizing, oh, today I'm on a high point in my wave. Everything is going to look amazing to me today. Everything is going to sound like something I want to do because I'm on that high end of my spectrum. And maybe in 2 days, I'm at the low end of my spectrum and everything looks shitty. And neither of those are the truth. If you're an emotional person, there's no truth in the now for you. And that's the mantra that I repeatedly tell clients that are emotionally defined. So it's the clarity that comes through the highs and the lows that really eventuates into something that you can make a dependable decision on. And we have to, as a collective, get better at just creating that space within ourselves and between each other so that we're not constantly in this reactive, subjective perspective. Because really, it's like just looking through one pixel of the greater screen of life, and it's just not the full picture. So the more that we can just give ourselves the time to go through our cycles and not have to make any definitive commitments, judgments, arguments, etc., and also understand that almost everyone around us is going through that. I mean, even if you're not an emotional being, you're a person that's open to the emotions of others. So you're absorbing and amplifying those emotions. So it's just something that we have to get accustomed to. We have to, grow up about it. We have to get really real and authentic with the fact that most of the time we're not clear enough to be making any judgment calls. And that allows us to hold more space for grace for each other in this like wild ride that we're going through.
Yeah, it reminds me of like, so if you look at Cancer, its square points are Libra, relationships, opposite, career, and then squaring our ego, Aries. And so it's an interesting thing of how usually when you take a client and whatever divination tool you're using, it's always relationships, career, or like what's going on with my life and where am I going? And really it's the emotional driver that your emotions are driving these positions so intensely. It's a cardinal sign. It's like emotions are what will start the whole process of wherever you go. And if you don't really start to kind of realize that your emotion is in a vehicle and pushing the accelerator like a train where it's really hard to get off those tracks if you're going to stay on that same emotion, you know, the longer you keep taking that emotion too, the longer it goes down that track to wherever, I don't know, if it's kind of harder to get off, and then you have to almost feel like you have to be ripped apart like emotionally to get off that track, even though it's the best thing sometimes possible.
Right. Sometimes we have to self-destruct to just get out of it.
Yeah. And so that's what's interesting because, now you bring up Pluto and Scorpio, which is why it's in trine. Like, we need Scorpio to be like, the boundary's here, end that emotion. Or we have Pisces where it's like, let it go. Let it go. You know, so that's what's kind of interesting when you look at astrology, and the signs all have their issues, but they're beneficiary elements that help them all out. And it's like, I think that right now, this Cancer stuff is bringing a lot about the survival in just this world of, we like to say career or typical astrology, but 10th house is just really this whole world structure and how it is and how it's really intense. And there's all these people on the planet, and we've been doing this new game for a long time now, but it really hasn't been that long in ancient history. But really, it's the 80s, the Industrial Revolution, of this kind of like, wow, we have machines and we go to work 9 to 5. Like, that was not over 150 years ago. Like people like were like, I don't know, I'm on my farm doing my thing, or I'm doing this. Like, you know, today I took a day off because I wasn't feeling good. But now we're in a system where it's like you have 4 sick days, and
we're machines.
You know,
We're expected
exactly.
to be machines. And I think like we're at a really, really critical juncture, especially in terms of the topic of authenticity, where we're asking ourselves, is it authentic to expect ourselves to be machines? Is it authentic to expect a human being to function off of dopamine hits from social media rather than from really being connected to where they are in their own emotional cycle within the many micro and macro cycles that make up life? And I think like, yeah, we're just being almost forced back into our humanity by how little this greater system is serving us. And that's totally highlighted by these, like, you know, once in a lifetime transformational transits in Capricorn. I feel like everything that the Industrial Revolution was, and globalization and civilization, has created this great expansion for, you know, basically the world to hold more people, honestly, you know, so that we have
and live longer, and
enough food to live longer, and expand the gene pool and have more intermixing and just create more novel genetic combinations. And it's kind of set the stage for a lot of evolution, because we need to mix and exchange to really get that edge. But now it's like, also, we're not just pawns in evolution's big game, or civilization or society's big game. We're individually sovereign beings as well, that have total control over our destiny if we choose that. And so we're like refining the senses and the skills, the soft skills that we need to navigate life as ourselves, rather than just a cog in a machine or a piece of a greater puzzle. So,
which I think that you're right, and I think that, but that's what's weird about Aquarius, is because it's very Aquarian age that's coming in, and that sovereign individual self. But there is something about Aquarius of like having to know some pretty, I don't want to say genius, but you know, you have to also like have some really good understanding of like how the universe works, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like there is a universal compass, you know, like whether it's astrology or whether it's human design or these more advanced forms that are going to come out of all this. But there will be, there is a needing to like seek and understand like life, which is disconnecting a little bit from things that really are not advancing your life forward anymore. And seeking those things that are advancing your life so you can step into that energy. I think that's what the Aquarian is pouring the water in the cup is like the water of what you're going to ingest, which is like you are like, that's going to nourish that individuality and that moving of forward energy that will move you forward. I mean,
yeah, and I feel like it's also like this kind of relief, because Capricorn is so high pressure and it's so intense in its ambition to be the best and structure into this amazing, epic destiny of high-flying achievement or whatever. And then we get over into Aquarius and it's like, oh, I can just be myself. You know, I have all that knowledge from Capricorn. Great. That helps me systematically see how the universe works. But now we're just like pouring the vessel, and that's revealing that we just like maybe get to go back to our farm or whatever our farm is and just be like, oh, I'm going to spend some time with me today. And then also maybe create something beautiful tomorrow. But like, it's, to me, it feels like this release of this like Capricornian, like,
well, you know, you'd think like Capricornian energy doesn't have dopamine, but it really does in a really high way. Like not like there's no, I don't think it's like in between. Like when you were saying all that, I had this vision of like, well, I got my office on the 25th floor in the corner, right? So it's like I've been waiting forever, and you get that big dopamine hit. But then like, let's say a year goes by, you don't even appreciate that office anymore. You don't even you're just like, I gotta get done things. And then the Aquarian part of yourself kind of, when it comes into Aquarius, kind of goes like, well, like I do feel disconnected to at one time what I thought was everything, like that I thought what I was going to reach. And I think there's people, like we see that with like material possessions more now. Like you buy something and it's like faster and faster, not that relevant anymore to yourself, where it felt like a lot longer. As I don't know, maybe when I was a kid on Christmas, that BMX bike, man, for years I was, thank God that Santa Claus brought that thing. Where now, you know, like there's really nothing in the world that you can have, that you can buy, that will like make you just go, gosh, every second of every minute, that's just always doing something, because you'll realize you're dealing with so many other things in life that you achieve it, you get it, and then you're like, And I think it is this weird moment where I think emotions are being placed into more human, more caring, more real, and more substantive quality. That's what I think this Taurus revolution is. It is a Taurus revolution with Uranus.
It's like when the lights come on in the club at the very end and you see everybody and it's like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, the illusion is gone. Because I know, like, it looks like, yeah, and then it turns on and you really see everybody's sweating and everybody's got pale white faces. They're like on a bunch of drugs or something. And then they're like, turn into like, you know, like, don't see me. It's really weird.
Yeah.
It's like,
I also feel like it's been a lot of radical responsibility. Like with Saturn here, it has felt like a lot of boundaries, a lot of, like when Abby was saying 2 feet on the ground, like it's like that self-respect that's been coming in a lot, and a lot of self-responsibility, and in the sense of like also untangling what's not our responsibility. And so like the pawn thing, it's like being a pawn for somebody else's pleasure or gratifying somebody else's sense of feeling happy or just good in general. I felt like there's been a really big unentanglement of like coming back to oneself and being like, it's not working for me. Like Abby was saying again, like leaning on somebody else for happiness or blaming somebody for unhappiness. You know, that's suffering. There's so much suffering in that. And so that revolution of Taurus, revolution of our values, revolution of abundance, of joy, it's like, God, I just want to like take care of myself and honor what makes me happy and have a clear idea of what an authentic yes is, a clear idea of what an authentic no is. And like, I'll deal with the consequences of how somebody else might feel, but like, I'll let that be theirs. And it's like, it's so I mean, we might have, I almost felt like there was like boundary hangover symptoms, you know, like just any kind of courage hangover, boundary hangover, change hangover, whatever. And I think that's been kind of detoxing in this eclipse season, because we have been calling ourselves forward, maybe more than we're even letting ourselves admit or see in the moment. I think in like a few weeks, we'll be like, wow, I stepped up. And I had that kind of yesterday. I was like, I felt like a really hard day, but then when I reflected back on it, I was like, but I showed up for it. Like, I actually did great. That was a great day. So yeah, I think there's like a lot of reestablishing this relationship with ourselves and getting like the idea of like, what is your lane? Stay in it. Like, focus has been like a big thing coming in, and just like, yeah, what are you looking at? What are you looking through? And what are you trying to control that you can't control? And where you're just draining your energy with these intense emotions or these attachments that really, at the end of the day, if you finally patch it up and it works, it's like, okay, that's great. Just stay okay and I'll be okay. And like, that's not working. And I feel like all those systems that we like patched up, they're breaking through in a beautiful way, because it's like, okay, we need to like like in a Capricorn sense, it's like, let's address the real problem. Like, let's like solve the actual problem and get to the bottom of it, because we got things to do, we got places to go, we got people, we got work to do, we all have work to do, you know.
Yeah, and I think there is this with the eclipse here and all the Saturn Pluto, it's like, as long as the work gets done, there's a part where it's like the stress becomes time. because it is the ruler of time, it's over extreme, right? It's like, I am like 5 minutes behind, or I'm here at this time, or da 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 da. When right now it's Cancer. It's like, well, I got to make sure that I'm emotionally, in the right space to be able to do it. I'll do it, but it's like, let me relieve myself of some stress for a second. It'll get done. And I know I don't want to try and advocate for, I guess you could say, putting things off longer or to the side. But it's like knowing, like, kind of like how a nap works, right? It's like, I need a nap before I can go here real quick, right? Like, instead of tripping yourself out and being like, no, I'm going to push through this so hard that it probably won't get done that great. You'll be in a horrible state. And as long as you just still get it done, you know what I mean? Like, I think that this time thing, it really is an illusion, like, and then people start to really go, well, my time, and this is where I'm at with my time, and and everybody starts flipping. That's like, just take it a second if you need a little break, or if you need to sleep in a little longer to be able to do it right. Like this morning, I was like, after all the things I've been going through and everything, and then I'm like, I have 3 shows I'm going to do, and I have to do a daily, and I have to do, I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, I just need this extra hour, I just need it. Or else I wouldn't still probably be here right now. I'd probably be like zonked out. And I think that this is a big realignment of just, well, we can go on to like 5 after dark hours on that, but time itself is really a deep, deep, deep shifting element right now. Like the revolution of time, and as far as its transmutation of what we look at it. And I love nonlinear time. That's why I love astrology or human design and gene keys, or even like Abby, you were bringing up this new year we're coming into on July 26th. I would like to hear about that. Isn't that when the Waib ends?
What we were talking about is we're at the end of a 13-year cycle, basically, on the galactic code, and we just had all of this. The last cycle was crystallizing waters, which means that it can be cleansing, or it can basically like abolish things from our life. And it's just like if you take a bath, man, you can get in there and just like wash off everything. And that's what we had this whole last year. And then on the 26th of July, what it goes into is the white wizard. And the wizard is timelessness. So I think we're really going to see time completely shift. This next year, you know how you look back sometimes and you think maybe something happened 2 weeks ago, and really it was, 2 months ago?
Yeah, like that's been already coming into this. Like, actually, you weren't here. Maybe it was last week or it was the week before. I was telling Dylan, I'm like, Mercury's retrograding in the zone of where Waib is. Like,
well, it's a complete void.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's really hard to see, what is on the other side of it. Have you ever had a near-death experience? It's
every day.
It's like I
live in LA and drive in traffic, and
wow. I feel like I had one of those, and it was such a void. There was like this certain point, and it's like this decision that you get to make. Do you want to be here or not? And if you're going to be here, you're going to fully invest. And if you're not, then you're just not going to be here. But it's a decision that I feel like we're making as humanity. And I feel like that's what's coming in with this new, the year of the wizard, which Dylan is the wizard in the galactic code.
Do warriors do well in wizard? I don't know. I don't.
You know what you're realizing? No, that intelligence is always like flowing through for you. That's what a warrior is. It's like pure intelligence and channeling, communication that's coming through. But I think for the wizard, it's like learning about the fact that time is so much more expansive than we can even understand, because how long have the birthday we just had for the United States, to realize we've only been here 243 years. And you think about, like our grandparents are 100 years, maybe they were 100. Like that puts kind of like a timeline on something that we feel has been here forever.
Right.
Like when was money actually instituted? I mean, it seems like such a short amount of time, but it's like if you were to zoom back and look at this linear timeline, you would see all these things that had already, taken place. And I think that's what we're going to be coming into the full understanding of.
Yeah, and actually we all talked about dimensions. It was like weeks ago. And time dimensional stuff. And really, it's interesting you're bringing that up, because tonight on Deep Astrology, I was trying to show people, I'm like this like kind of major last week, because next week, like, this is a whole new story, and it's going into a whole different place. And there really is some really beautiful things coming here. So it's like, do this work right now. Like, now. Crystalline in the waters now.
Right? And they call it dementia, right? Like I've noticed this, because it's like you're going in and out of dimensions. And so I think it's really important to realize what that really is. A lot of people use these terms and they may not understand what dimensions really are even. But it's like if I were to take like a red bouncy ball and bounce it over there to you, and it bounced a couple times, and that camera's taken a picture of that full thing, you can see the full trajectory of the ball. But it's like if you were to take and slice that photo into thirds, and maybe you only saw this top part of the picture, you're only going to see this ball right here. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the realization is that at any point in time, we can choose to zoom out and see a bigger picture. And that helps us to take away the angst, or the concern to try to figure everything out right now. Because we realize in the big picture of things, the earth and the circadian rhythms, all the things that are going on around us, those things are, they're ever evolving, and they're evolving with or without us being on this planet.
Yeah.
So it's like the big picture, it helps if you look at, like when there was the earthquake in California. What's really important at that moment in time?
I already told you my story.
Right.
But as Earth Gaia, this mother, as a mother adjusts things for a baby, maybe to grow up better, like going like, yeah, we're getting rid of the crib and it's moving into a bed, right? Like, subconsciously the baby is probably tripping. We don't remember some of that stuff. But I feel like that's what some of these earth changes are. It's like it's presetting for what's next. Instead of fearing it, like the science community fears things of change. They like it to be the same. Like, I want the periodic table of like to be exact always, right? But there is this like evolutionary change that goes too, which there is like, I think, a adjustment that's positive that we don't see yet, that maybe Earth is preparing itself for. Maybe.
Well, I think the most important thing that happens in times like that is we unify more. Like, we see what's really important.
Well, like Avalon.
Right?
That's a wizard, Merlin, the Lady of the Lake, gives Arthur, basically, like, this whole story is a timeless story. It's where we get chivalry and actually how it is actually used in real life. Like, it's from a story that's a timeless story. You don't really know what time period's in. How ironic too with like Game of Thrones. Like, what time is that? There is no time period, right? Like, how long is their winter? It's a different time. Well, I don't know. It really is this or that. I don't know. But like, we are kind of maybe moving into this space of timeless stories that really define life, and then we might realize that we were all just written in a story from a wizard.
And on that note,
But I think that yeah, like I've always been a big believer, because in past life regressions, people just think it's crazy, and I didn't know the story of Avalon. I didn't know the story of like the Knights in the Round Table. I didn't even know it. Like, sure, I saw Sword in the Stone, the Disney version, but I didn't know it. It was like, to me, I was a little kid, like, oh, that's a cool story, but that one's boring. I'd rather go, where's Lion King or whatever, you know what I mean? And when I had a trance channeler tell me this, I had my past life regressions pull up stuff from Avalon, and the stories were so defined in my life. I was like, what? And so some people don't get it, but I really believe there are these wider pictures, these other storylines that are not what we see and what we think is our time, that are happening in other times that we are going to go see and feel that are happening or be part of, when you kind of don't even know you're part of it, but you are.
Yeah. What I'm getting is that life is a mystery, and time is a mystery, and who we might be throughout many dimensions and many times and many places at any given moment is not necessarily something that we can intentionally discover. Some of us are lucky enough to, some of us don't. It's serendipity. It's the vehicle you were given, and it's the lifetime that you happen to drop into. And I think, especially right now, it's a great time to embrace the mystery, because there's so little certainty, and our perceptions are shifting so quickly and so vastly that we need to keep it simple. We need to remember that fear is going to try and get in your way, that creating inner space between what's happening around you or what you perceive to be happening around you and how you react is pivotal to your personal peace, and that in the end, only love is real. And I think for now, as we transform, and there's so much mutative energy and transdimensional energy and solar flares, and the Schumann resonance is off the charts on our planet, it's like we really have to wait and see sometimes what it all means. And while we do kind of wait through the changes and the waves and the shifts, just to keep it human, to keep it real, to keep it authentic, to keep it honest and transparent, and dare to be that person that is radically transparent with what they're going through or what they feel or where they're at. And just, I think that alone can invoke so much more unity and support and more of the stuff we're honestly really craving anyway, deep down. So
that's it. That's the real, and crave is a good word, but I think it's like, that's what feels like truth and home, Like we feel far away from home when it's
right
like,
here.
Like when you're expressing yourself and somebody's not gonna like be real back or something, you're like, okay, now I feel alone,
Right.
Like, so, okay, well, at least I'm at home in myself, but I think we do want more in others in life and things
Connection.
to show up. Yeah.
And validation even. And that's okay. I just think it's important to remember, like, there's no wrong answer to life. And if you feel like the pressure to find the right answer is like driving you crazy or making you feel scared or uncertain, just remember that we don't create the answers, we receive them.
Yeah.
And the less caught up we are in a frantic search for something or the need to just land on something and just know, the sooner that we can relax and just actually receive the real truth, which will probably be much more, fill us up much more than we could otherwise.
Well, I like the Avalon story so much because it goes really well with Abby's understanding of the Galactic Code. And what you're saying is that King Arthur wasn't searching for this, sword in the stone, right? Like Excalibur. He wasn't searching for it. It was like Merlin showed up with the Lady of the Lake and rode horses to the Lady in the Lake. She pulled it out of the water. Lancelot, who was King Arthur's best friend and who was the Knight of the Round Table, was taken away by the Lady of the Lake from his family. Like, he didn't even have a choice, to be brought into Avalon for his role and what he did. There's a lot of Merlin at the center of all of it. And when I went through my past life stuff about Merlin, he knew the whole time Camelot would end, but he also enjoyed watching everybody feel like it would be full on forever, because it was going to teach them later on. And I think there's a lot of stories too, Jesus having more than 12 disciples and telling this cave full of 50 or more that we were going to reincarnate multiple lives and spread this energy until we reach our last really incarnation, which I guess a lot of the Bible calls the second coming, but it's more of this to help plateau and get out of a plateau of this similar energy and move people to a more, I guess you could say, a more timeless state, or an imaginative, more beautiful state that we can be living in. Because I think the hardest part about the Capricorn time system is it really is center to control, right? Controlling our lives through a calendar system that's 7 days a week, this month, this day. And a lot of it is very Saturnian, where it's about work, or the work before 9 to 5 was the work of you going to the church. And even Copernican theory and Copernicus, and that the earth revolves around the sun, and that the sun doesn't, that we, that we are not stationary and the sun revolves around us, kind of created this whole kind of notion of it was all from the church, and it was very backed, but it was weird because they were very against science, but they were all about Copernican theory, but not about Ptolemy theory, which was that the sun revolved around the earth. They were no, you are not that special, That was the whole thing, was you were not as special, you were random in the universe, and that there is this higher power that you're not that special. It's much more higher than you, and you don't have this kind of, and I can see how they could paint it as an egoic kind of thing, but it's I think we have lost our sovereign self as feeling we're being ego if we feel we do have some sort of rights to our sovereign power and our love. And that crossroads there, ironically enough, was 1500s and the 1600s, which is something that we are stepping into in this next 100 years, which the age of Aquarius will come fully by then. And with the Saturn-Pluto cycle of Capricorn, 15, 17, 18, this is what was being shifted in time too, and how time was even looked at. And so this is going to be a really weird thing about what people look at as time. Maybe there's going to be underground time system. Well, there already is. We're astrologers. We're talking on a different time system. The lunar eclipse happened at 2 p.m. Pacific today and on a Tuesday. But a lot of people didn't pay attention to that and just were well, right now I'm just getting off my lunch and I got to go back to checking my emails or something. But to us, it's this is it. Yeah. We're not paying attention to when, or does it fall on the right day? No. It's been, of course, it's difficult doing spiritual dance music, deep astrology, and this show all on an eclipse, because it's and it's on a Tuesday, which is when I do deep astrology. So it's deep astrology or after dark wouldn't be normal if the eclipse fell on a Wednesday, right? It would be I would have just done these two shows tonight and talk about the eclipse tomorrow. But no, it has been falling exactly on this like time system. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I got to go with that, what the universe is saying, but not keep following this whole like, well, my time and my control system is just, I can't do that. It's like, no, I'm going to like follow the more aligned time. And I think that one's going to be an interesting one to see people shift, because I think that the greatest awakenings, I notice more than ever now on Instagram too, like so many people are posting about Mercury retrograde in stories now that I'm like, what, you're posting about this now? Like, and it's not that I'm like upset or anything. I'm just like, kind of like, wow, this is kind of becoming more of a revolution now of like people opening up to it, where before everybody was talking about it. Now everybody's reposting it and putting that out, and, so people are waking up to these other time systems, which I think, the movement of the planets is a time system that actually created the time system, but it's just looked at opposite. Now we're looking at it from a paper calendar, or now a Google calendar, through the lens instead of looking direct to it.
Yeah, isn't that really kind of one of the backbones of the galactic code, is that all of these Western patriarchal kind of, they took time, they took the natural cycles and divvied them up in these really random, choppy systems that essentially separated humanity from natural cycles. And even with the emphasis on, Earth being the center and the sun kind of being revolving around us, it's so that they could take their idols and their objects of worship and say, worship this, not the sun, not the thing that actually gives you life. So it's all been kind of bastardized intentionally to manipulate and control. But I think that the energy is just becoming too strong, and it's going to align us back to the galaxy, the universe. Like even the very atoms within our bodies have a rhythm and a frequency of their own that, no one can stop that. No amount of propaganda, no amount of misinformation or attempt to control can stop the essence of life itself. And I think as we get more into our own flow as beings, individual beings, time itself will not matter as much, because that flow of when events happen and how they happen and at what frequency, it's all just a matter of your own expression of your energy rather than how it factors into some overarching structure.
This goes into the pineal gland thing.
It does.
Because if you think about it, when you do look up, if you do look up at the ecliptic and you watch this cycle of how humans did forever, and you watch planets go backwards, and you do that, you're like, that's actually what's happening. But like this whole theory that came in kind of changed that pineal gland of being like, no, look at it from outside for a second and look at it like this way, even though there's nobody out there doing that, right? Like, so it brings this really weird thing of like, no, look at it, that's just an illusion. But is it an illusion? Because the truth is that it actually is happening, though. Like, the planet is going backwards in our view. And so there's that aspect of like, deny that, push that one away, and just know that that's just an illusion. Nothing to see here. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When it's really, there's something to see there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially like last year's Mars retrograde during the summer was just right in our face. Like the closest Mars had been to Earth in like, since the 70s. It was just like, and that's because we were so close to Mars. And, it was very Martian and intense last summer. And, it's ironic that now here we are looking straight at Pluto and Saturn, right? Even though you can't see Pluto, but you know what I mean? And Jupiter, which they are all coming into this big thing, but we're not going to be able to see it come when they all come together, because the sun will brighten it out. We won't be able to see it. So that's going to be weird, that there's going to be such a collection of stuff in 6 months from now that we won't be able to actually see it, but we'll know it's going on behind there. And
one more thing about time, it feels like it's been like 5 years since last summer. Like, even though maybe it seems like time is going faster, or maybe to some people slower, like so much is happening in our lives now that I feel like that's redefining time too. It's like, time is what? The measurement of events in a sequence. And if that's the case, then time has become so much more deep than it used to be as well. And at the same time, I feel like we're almost doing less, but more is happening. I don't know. It's a lot.
Yeah, I feel like that's, you just said it's like deepening, and that's so Plutonic to have that effect on Saturn.
Right.
Yeah. And then I was also thinking, when you were talking about time, like what actually like makes time a certain amount of sequences, and I was thinking how Venus is opposing Saturn right now, and then Pluto, and how another subject that's coming up for evaluation is the subject of how we define love and relationship. And we can name all these things like paradigms, or we can name all these things like those things, but it's like, what is love? Like, love, we in patriarchy or in the old Saturn systems, there's like these certain conditions that we meet, and then that makes it love. And then if it's a certain amount of time with somebody, then that definitely makes it love. And then if it's, you know, get married or whatever, to show these things. And now it's like, it's a resonance. And it always has been. Like, that's the other thing, is it's almost like we're not really even moving forward. And I think that's like so South Node Saturn Pluto is like, we're just like getting rid of the shit that like covered it up from the first place, to get back to just like this, like you said, realignment to what's going to happen. It's nature's law. It's Pluto's law. It's evolution's law. So it's like, love is love, you know, and like life is life, death is death. Like, it's just this getting really like, I don't know.
Does it resonate or does it not? You know, I think that's a huge measure of love in the life of an individual. It's like, and that's a huge thing that's highlighting right now, is like, let's get real. Does it resonate or not? Period. You know, okay, doesn't resonate. That's not love for me. It can be love for you. Fine. And I think that we're being asked to drop our conceptual idea of what love or fulfillment or whatever positive yeses, like shoulds, you know, what we should attain. That concept, that definition is being rewritten in the image of our truth, and that truth is so unique and so individual, and we're just being almost forced to come to terms with the fact that a lot of the stuff that we thought we wanted, needed, coveted, just isn't true, and that maybe we could be much happier with much less. And yet it's almost as if we have to be that much more real with ourselves to attain it. You know, we can't fake that to ourselves. We can't fake what we love, and we're not going to be able to ignore that as we go forward. It's going to be
and it takes courage though to do that, because Leo is that courage. Like, remember when you were young, like, to tell your first person you liked them was like or your first dance, like, I'm gonna dance with you, like, do you want to dance? Is like, you're talking to your friends for like 5 days about that like, you know, moment, you know. And I think that's what's missing in today's world, is that like people are afraid to just tell people how they really feel about them, because it's like, well, there's so many things in society now, like, oh, that's the wrong thing to say, or how you should say it, or you got to do it this way. It's like people are afraid to really say what they really feel. And I think it takes courage with heart. And this is this Leo that was suppressed from the Scorpio stuff, which kind of tried to like kind of hide it and get to the truth of like, is it really there? And it's all over now. So it's like, okay, this is going to be the first sun in Leo without, it is going to erase the PTSD of the last 7 years, you know?
also, like, think about when you meet somebody that you connect with that goes beyond time, that goes beyond words, that goes beyond explanation. Like, I feel like in the last year, so much of life has been aligned to, like, and the same thing happens when you meet something that you resonate with on that level that you connect with. So if it's your work, if it's, you know, a connection, but I think that is what's happening right now. That is the gift. That's what we're shedding, is things that don't bring that depth of sense of fulfillment, and like realizing how rich it is when you live in that, when you like love in that. And it's also funny because it's like we can use the old paradigms to structure and build and support a relationship to last and call it love because it meets these criteria. But those same things can also deteriorate an honest, strong bond, because it can be like, if I'm allowing that perception to like guide my understanding of love, I could determine this relationship is like, you're doing this thing that I learned that means that's not love, you know? But it's like, that's not how we judge love. Like, that's not, I mean, we can, but I feel like we're missing out on so much, because it's like, it's a feeling, it's an essence. It's not a freaking commodity like time.
Yeah, we become so practical about everything.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we're just finding our way back into feeling, because that's where spirit is in the feeling. And you know the truth by the way it feels.
Well, I have a question. So 2001 was the last Cancer North Node. For me in my life, there's a lot of feeling that started to come up. I was like junior and just senior in high school, and sure, I had my puppy love first girlfriend, but it was like, whoa, like now I really had like a girlfriend that I really felt. And then I went to the military and she broke up with me because I was going to be in the military for 5 years. That was bound to happen. But there was a weird element of like, when all these eclipses finished and the North Node went into Gemini and all this stuff, like it was like the 2000s was like massive feeling. Like, you know, it was like, man, I felt you. And man, it was like very easy to just be like, wow. But I feel like that we've been on the opposite side of this for so long now. We're just kind of like coming back to it. It's like, that's what happens, I think, when we come at the end of the cycle, is you do kind of feel barren or stripped from it in many ways, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that there is something about this 2020 in so many different ways, right? Like that's so revolutionary in feeling, so revolutionary in a million different projections and places, but it's just like, you know, this is kind of, you kind of have to do some basic stuff and be like, we are kind of coming back to 2001, you know, like as far as like not only every 20 years, that was also Jupiter, Saturn, and Taurus. Now we're going to have Jupiter, Saturn, and Aquarius, you know, so this is going to be a very similar on how, and I think it's really weird because I remember in 1999, like thinking about 2000 was insane. Mm-hmm. But just because we're in the 2000s, 2020 is just like, whatever. I remember being at a party with Christopher Wojtecki, the astrologer that I, you know, learned the most from, and we were roommates and everything. And we went to a party for New Year's Eve for 2010, and him and I were just mind blown, you know, about just 2010. We would ask other people at the party, and they were just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I was just like, okay. Like there's something like changing decades alone. But again, that might be this whole time system thing. I don't know. But there is something major about this one that's got way more on it than normal.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't usually look into the future too much because I don't think it's that valuable. I'm more of an advocate for being present, and yet I feel that this juncture with 2020 is bringing such a value shift to people. And the values maybe not even is the right word, because it's almost like it's bringing a whole new spectrum of what we really are going to need as people after 2020 is going to change. It's like, I don't know, what's an analogy? Like, we're all playing with Pokemon cards, and then next year we need like
I'd love to just fill
car.
this blank in for you.
Yes,
so
please.
every 20 years, Jupiter, Saturn meet. And so it's always on the zeros. So 2000, right? It's like Nirvana to, you know, computers downloading Napster and like no more CDs and like this whole new wave of
Nirvana
energy.
to
and,
like bubblegum pop.
yeah, and but a lot of things changed. And then 1980, right? That was the end of the 70s, and this whole like 80s wearing Walkmans, like, you know, starting to wear clothes. It always reminds me of like, I don't know why, Patrick Bateman in American Psycho and how he lived, you know, like a little bit of the 80s whole thing. But then you go back again 20 years, the 60s, leaving the 50s and the Betty Crocker and da-da-da-da. And now the 60s was kind of like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to do that. I'm going to go break free and be a wild child, you know? The 40s, moving from the 20s and 30s, right? Was like, you know, jazz now and like, but there was also conservative kind of thing of the 40s, you know? There was like this kind of like more polished, we were figuring things out, because the roaring 20s was pretty wild and crazy that 1920 brought in, because in 1900 it was the old archetypal, like there was still horse and wagon and there was still like these kind of things, and now the automobile's out and right. And then 1880 you get light, you get electricity, and you get like it really powerfully like being gridded, like and light bulbs being used, and it was a major revolution, and that's where you get the Industrial Revolution. But then you go to 1860, and that's Lincoln, and that's shifting the consciousness of what is right for humanity, where 1840 was like a free-for-all of like people doing whatever they want. They were claim jumping, they were having slaves, they were, I mean, it was a gnarly moment. So yeah, these it's the decades that have that zero that are on the Jupiter Saturn cycle that always are the ones that like shift us to that next level. And we're at the end of that 20 year.
With Pluto.
And then you can add Pluto too, that's going to be there, but I'm just talking just on Saturn and Pluto or Jupiter.
Yeah, but I'm saying Pluto's obviously coloring or like adding influence.
Totally.
And so it actually all ties back into everything we've said, which is like back to the basics, back to the natural order of things, back to like this dissolution of illusion of what matters. And it's the Taurus revolution of like being present and enjoying what is, and like finding your joy from within, and like not having it be something that's like so easily taken or like so like challenging to gain. It's like, wow, I'm like that crazy person who's just fucking happy. Yes. I'm just fucking happy. I don't need to even think of a bunch of reasons why. I just like, I love who I am. I'm grateful to be alive, and everything's working out, you know? And then also humanity, like connecting to people. So it's like, I think the sooner we can like put down the blame, put down this separation, put down these wars against ourselves and each other, the more quickly we'll be able to enjoy the present moment together. Like, I feel like it's going to, 2020, I'm like stoked for that next era. I think it's going to be a complete like restart, in the sense of like, we're going to get all of our power back if we're willing to put all the shit down and all the distractions.
It starts today with this eclipse, basically.
All day, every day.
Yeah, what were you going to say, Abby?
I just remember in 2000, all we were concerned about is getting supplies, because we thought it was going to be the end of the world. It was Y2K. I mean, we were buying generators and food, and it was almost like a panic, and it was all for naught.
It really was all for naught. It was North Node and Cancer. We were okay the whole time. Mm-hmm. But I think, it's like, to this interesting point that Sarah made of Pluto, the last Pluto cycle that shifted signs was 2008 with it coming into Capricorn. But that wasn't during the new decade of 2010 with this Jupiter-Saturn thing. So what it did was it kind of, you felt the major shift, but it didn't really change. It kind of 2000s kind of blended into 2010s pretty well, if that makes sense. Like people were still wearing skate shoes and reality shows were continuing on. Whereas now at the end of this, like nobody really watches reality shows anymore. Like I take little things like that, right? Like I'm like, oh yeah, 2000s begin the reality wave. It was peaked out in 2010. I know that because I was during that moment of the peak out. And then now we're at the end and nobody cares, you know? Like, you know, there's so many reality shows that everybody's like, which one? I don't know, you know, like, or whatever. So there is what is going to be like the next thing here that comes in the 2020s to 2040. And that one's gnarly to me because in 2040, which is kind of funny because in the movie that Steven Spielberg just did from the book, what is it, the VR movie, Ready Player One, they based that whole movie on 2045 when like basically in Ohio, everybody's just living in these containers in a dump, but they're living their life in the virtual reality world. Which is kind of intense because I looked at that time and Saturn's in Scorpio back again in the 2040s. There's going to be that gnarly, intense energy of what we went through now, like kind of then in a weird way. But yeah, I like to look at these jumps, and 2020 is a big deal. It's a big deal because that 20-year cycle is going to be insane. And it's Jupiter, Saturn in air, not Earth for the last couple hundred years. That America has had. America hasn't had this Jupiter, Saturn air thing yet. Which that's going to be weird. So, anybody have any last thoughts on tonight's After Dark?
I think my only thought is just focus on the positives and focus on the things that you love in life and on the beauty that is here, and really make that decision, you know, like, are we going to live? If we're going to live, let's just live. And I really do believe that things are better than we give them credit for. And I also want to say that it's really awesome being part of the chat and seeing things. You know, there's so many people in here that they watch, I mean, faithfully, David. It's like if you go online, they're there. And they're there the whole entire time, too. And it's awesome to be on that side of it, and it's also awesome to see everybody on this side of it. So thank you guys for all the support that you do give 100%. Shows like this, because there aren't leaders without people that are there, you know, like supporting and following and being a huge part of it. And so just know you are appreciated.
Very much so. And especially today for me, you know, the post I made on my socials today was pretty intense, life-changing for me. Although, to be clear, it wasn't like it happened today. You know what I mean? So I think some people misread it like, oh gosh, on the eclipse, like, it's like, no. Things like this take a long time, you know, and you plan when to say them when it's finally all done. And so people know, and it's at the right time and stuff, you know, so. But I got a lot of support today. And I want to say thank you to everybody. And even my soul fam here has been supporting me through it the whole time. Not to say I didn't get much today, but just kidding.
It was a busy day.
Yeah, no, I know. But you know, I mean, today was pretty gnarly for me just because it's been closed, but just that post was the final close to the public, right? Right. Mm-hmm. So when you have a closing door and you get that much support, it's like, wow. And I know it's great with the support, like Abby said, with showing up for the content and the support of doing the work, but the support just going through a personal situation that really kind of, maybe it has some part of the work too. I don't know. A lot of people were just saying, wow, you're of integrity and all this stuff. And I was just kind of like, what do you mean? And I just feel like that was a normal post, like honoring the relationship and how great it was. And I wish her the best. But people were writing like, it's nice to see a guy not throwing out like all their ex's crap publicly, you know? And I thought about that one a lot today. Like, people do that? I guess they do. I don't know. That's not been ever in my field. But yeah, I mean, and for me on this eclipse, you know, like that was a lot of the work that I was doing this whole time, you know? And so now that that's over, I think for me, it's a lot of just surrender. I'm not like trying to figure out what's next, you know? It's like, there's just no trying to like define what it is and what's my next move or something. It's just like, what do you mean? Like, I'm just going to show up, be doing my work and be living my life, you know? So, but I do have to thank everybody out there for being there, you know?
I think what you guys have been going through has been a really fine example to, you know, people just in the world in general, because relationships are going through a shift as well. And there is a way to go through it with dignity and respect. And how we were talking about love a little while ago. When you really truly love someone, that does not ever die. And I think that's what you guys have shown each other. It's like you don't have to be enemies.
Yeah.
You know, it's like things may not be working the way that it looked, you know, 2 years ago, but when you have gone like to the wall and tried again, and, you know, like you feel really comfortable with what you're doing as a human. And I don't just mean you. I mean every single person here that has been going through relationship issues. I think it helps us to see that it doesn't have to be ugly. You know, there is beauty that can be seen even in a breakup. And what I love seeing is that there is still love, you know, there is love between you guys, and nobody's being forced to take sides or, you know. Yeah. It's all just a natural evolution of relationship.
Yeah, and I think the big lesson I've learned through it too is, you know, in relationships, we can get attached responsibility for others and worry about others, or sometimes that can be one part, or then it's the opposite where it's like control of others or whatever. But I think when you come to points like this, like I've never been through a divorce before. So this was a whole new territory for me, but it was like, you know, it's like at the same time, like, okay, letting myself let go of like, is she going to be okay? Is she going to be all right? You know, is she going to be okay on her light work path? Or, you know, all these kind of things. It's just like, that's just, you just got to like let that be.
Or what is everybody else going to think? You know?
Yeah, that one I kind of wasn't too concerned about, because I think everybody, the writing was on the wall. Like, you know, like, where was the last picture we took together? Like 7 months ago or whatever. So, but it's like, there's this whole aspect of just like, I don't know, I'm a Leo, so I'm kind of like, whatever people think. And so, but I think that one affects a lot of people though. For me, it doesn't. I'm like, I think I'm a little bit more of like showing off somebody new. That's my issue. Like, is this somebody like that I really want to show off to the world? That's such a Leo thing. Like, do I want to walk the red carpet with you? Like, have all those paparazzi taking pictures? You know? Like, that'll be on Getty Images. Like, won't go away. So.
I love your transparency so much.
It's true. I mean it's a curse of the double Leo with the red carpet. But, you know. But I just want to thank everybody for the support and supporting Leanna as well. And, that and everybody here that's been supporting me. It hasn't been very easy, of course, and it's been new waters for me, totally. And, I've definitely gone to the other side, and definitely I don't feel like I'm some boat drifting out of nowhere, you know what I mean? But I do feel a sense of calm now from it all, that it's all done, and that, it's not like announcing it like as if it's new. It's like announcing it that it's been done, and it's all done. It's all dissolved, and it was just the right time. Like, I don't need to get personal and tell people the timelines, you know what I mean? But like, it was the right thing to let people know, so they stop asking and watching content and asking, "Are you married still? Are you married still? Are you married still? Are you married still?" It's like, wow.
I'm sure the fans are very excited to hear that.
I don't know. Somebody hit me up. One of my friends hit me up like, "I'm sure your DMs are popping right now." And I'm like, to be honest with you, nobody hit me up. I think they all wanted to respect my space, So actually it kind of showed the opposite of like people really
Class
are.
act.
Maybe it just shows that people are better than we all think they are, or I don't know. Although, for me, I'm like, whatever, like, people can hit me up. I'm not the kind of person who's like, gosh, I'm going through a post, going to this whole social media thing. Like, I'm going through a post. It's kind of an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
like
think
a post doesn't embody the whole thing, or posts can be made at certain times for certain reasons or whatever. But like, I'm going through this post right now. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not to me, but that's okay.
Well, if you think about it, right? Like when somebody puts and makes a post about something, was it just a post right now? Like you're in your bed and you're like, I need to post this so I can make this up. Not like make it up, but like make this post up, like make it happen.
Post the post.
Or is there planned posts, like, that are like, this is the right time in which everything's done and I want to post about this and just let people know, it's not like it's like I woke up this morning and needed to post this because this just happened. You know what I mean? Some people take everything now with post as that's what just happened in your life. Oh my God, there are a lot of those. But there are also posts and where I say people are like, you're going through a post, we tend to attach to like what's said in the post without knowing everything else behind it, because there's way too much of real life, which is the core of what we were talking about at the beginning of this.
So it's like a post.
Yeah, it's like a post. Yeah. Which it's like a Russian doll,
Yeah. Babushka.
Yeah.
All right.
Final word, Sarah.
I'm good with the Russian doll ending.
Well,
I just want to say, I think it's just everything everyone's already said. I think that's it. And like a big thank you to support to the people watching, the people here, the people not watching, just support everywhere and coming to peace with the endings and the changes. Maybe it's not an ending and it's gone. Maybe it's an ending in the way things were. But when we come to peace with it, it's like everything everything opens up. And I think right now there's a lot of things opening up if we can just come to peace with change. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well,
Snaps.
of course, check out High Vibe. These two have awesome classes on High Vibe TV. I'm tired. It's High Vibe. High Vibe TVschool.com. That's what it is. Yes. But they have their courses on there, and also you can get amazing readings from these two at their. Just follow them on their socials. Dylan, you're at The Spirit Advisor with an O, right?
The Spirit Advisor.
And Sarah yours is Sarah Paasch with 2 A's, right? And SCH.
Yeah, Sarah_Paasch.
And you can always find Abby and I at highvibe.tv. And we appreciate you being on the show and all the support and all the love and definitely helping us bring the content out like this. Thank you all very much. We will see you again next week and truly appreciate you all. Actually, it'll be my birthday next week.
Yeah.
On Tuesday. So
we have to start celebrating now.
That's what we're going to do right now. Celebrate.
We're going to pre-post celebrate the post.
I haven't had a birthday party in since my 30th birthday party.
Dun, dun.
I feel like I want to throw a party in my life. I'm ready.
Oh.
Craig, throw the party on Deep Love Tarot. Make sure you check out Deep Love Tarot. It was awesome. And Craig, it's been awesome having Craig on the show.
There's a T-Rex.
Yes.
It's sad because I made that. But yeah, that's a cool party. So anyway, thank you all very much.
T-Rex party.
We'll see you on highvibe.tv and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye. Happy eclipses. Woo.